As a trustee, you may not overstep administrative functions that belong to the superintendent, but you should have a working understanding of district policies and be prepared to champion programs or changes that, or changes that are important to students and families. Please share your understanding of the district's current bilingual and special education programs and their respective roles in achieving equity. We are currently asking for your understanding at this time of those programs, and that goes over to Len.
Thank you, Candace. Bilingual education, I think the ideal model is dual language. I think there is data that shows that implemented well and faithfully, it helps the home language and English become a bridge to each other, to develop those languages simultaneously, honors children's culture, and I really believe in the model of biliterate, bicultural, and bilingual. I think it's a strength. I struggled to learn enough Spanish to get by, and it wasn't easy. I value it. I worked hard for it. But the dream of children who come speaking another language and children who come speaking English to become truly, truly able to live and work in another language is powerful. And I think we need to have faith that even when the test scores don't look as strong as they might in third grade, that if we stick with it, we do it well, that it will continue. And what I have seen from spending time with families, from helping families be advocates, is that at too many of our schools, that model is not being honored. It is not being implemented faithfully. And I think that is damaging opportunities for our children. And I think ultimately it costs Austin ISD more in the long run than getting it right from the beginning. It is a right, we have an obligation to educate every child who comes to us and to do that well from the beginning. Special education, I think, has some similar issues. I think a lot of children are not identified early enough, and I've heard from too many families who say that it's largely a process of compliance and that we're behind, that we don't do inclusion well enough, that teachers don't have always the foundation that they need to serve students well in their classrooms, to have the least restrictive environment. And I've talked to far too many families who've had to become experts. And I have referred so many families to the Coalition for Special Education Equity, to Bella Families, because they're not getting the information they need from their campuses. And we can and must do better.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question, because you mentioned dual language, and that's something I know, like you mentioned yourself, the district is not doing well. They're not doing with fidelity on all campuses. In fact, families are leaving. That is one of the reasons families are leaving. How would you hold yourself as a trustee and the administration accountable?
I think it starts with developing a clear understanding of what it should look like and a clear understanding of the data behind it. We have a city full of experts. I think trustees have an obligation to do that for any issue we're going to encounter. I need to understand issues that aren't my children's issues, as well as I understand my own children's need. And I think the trustees have an obligation to turn to experts to know what best practices are. I think administrators have the same duty, and I think Austin ISD should make sure that they are paid and that time is made for people to understand what is best. And then I think it goes back to the fidelity testing and the fidelity measurement. We need to follow. To say it's being done and assume it's being done is not enough. And I think there's a culture of retaliation that keeps families and teachers from speaking up. I think we need an ombudsman so that when things aren't working, we need to restore that office. And so we have a way for people to catch that when it isn't working. And we need to understand that when people speak up, that's a positive, not a negative, for the long-term health of our community.
Thank you so much. To Jennifer, please share your understanding of the district's current bilingual and special education programs and their respective roles in achieving equity.
I think we have many dual language programs that are serving families very well and attract families into AISD. In District 5, we only have one dual language program at the elementary level, and that campus is closed for transfers. So many families in District 5 end up leaving D5, seeking out other dual language programs because it's attractive. And we need to continue those investments and making sure that the programs are being led with fidelity. Part of that is making sure that our native speakers are getting all of the services that they need to be set up for success, and that our dual language programs are not just structured for and around our English speakers. On special education, it's broken. We have so much work to do. We need structural changes. We need our special education director needs to be elevated to a higher level within the administration to really have a seat at the table. We need special education to be part of every conversation about academics, about reopening, about extracurriculars, and not siloed in its, as an afterthought. So that's what I hear from families, is that they are not getting the special education services that they need, and that it's dependent largely on the principal in determining the climate and the culture at individual campuses. That needs to change. And as a trustee, that's something that is a priority for me in directing the superintendent to develop an inclusion plan and prioritize improving our special education services.
Thank you so much. Please share your understanding of the district's current bilingual and special education programs and their respective roles in achieving equity. Piper.
Thanks, Candace. I'm going to start with special education and just say that I honestly didn't know a lot about our special education services before I started running for this seat. And every single parent that I've talked to, and I've talked to over 100 people at this point, and every single parent has said something about special education and about how it doesn't work in AISD. Whether they have a kid who has dyslexia and it took a year for an assessment, whether they have a kid who has an IEP that's not being followed, whether they have a kid who's been transferred to another school so that they get the services that they need, whether they have a kid who's in GT and doesn't feel like that's working for them. It's been astounding to me the number of parents that feel like that is really broken. And I think the thing that I have realized is that that is an across the district issue. That is everyone. That is D5, and that is across the issue, across the district, which means that we need to do a pretty strong look at what we're doing with special education across the district. I think we need a special education audit. I think we need to look at everything that's happening. I think we need to talk with families that are in the special education program and talk to them and do a climate survey and find out what it is they're seeing and feeling. And then I think we really need to talk to many of these special education teachers that are leaving. They're leaving the district, they're going to non-special education positions. Why are they leaving, and why are there so many of them leaving? I think those exit interviews would be really helpful for us as well to figure that out. On the dual language piece, I think that dual language looks very different based on the school. I think one of the things that's happening is we don't do a lot of good education for families about why dual language is so awesome. It frequently feels like it's shoved into schools. And so talking with families and with communities about why it's great and how it might look really different at a Paredes versus a Ridgetop school. Working out ways to make sure that we increase the opportunities, but recognizing the unique needs and what each community wants for their dual language in their school.